Hi, I'm Paul Fagan, the McCain Institute Senior Director for Human Rights and Democracy Programs, and you're in the arena with leaders and citizens who are taking character-based actions. In the Arena is a proud member of the Democracy Group Podcast Network. For more information, visit democracygroup.org.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Paul Fagan. I'm the Senior Director for Human Rights and Democracy Programs here at the McCain Institute. Today, we're very excited to be joined by Nino Evgenidze from Georgia. She heads the Economic Policy Research Center, a leading policy center think tank in Georgia, and a close ally friend of the McCain Institute. Nino, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, McCain Institute, doing this, because we all know and we all, they appreciate the role of the Senator John McCain in the fight of, for Georgia's freedom and democracy. And he was a founder of the this kind of two-party support at United States for Georgia. And we really appreciate, and the Georgian people never forget this. And I'm very happy always to participate in the events you are doing at McCain Institute.
There has been bipartisan support for Georgia's independence, for its democratic movement for the past decade or more, 2 decades. And today we are seeing a crisis in Georgia unfold on the streets and parliament and throughout the country. So yeah, I would love to get your point of view of what this crisis is about. And I'm looking forward to having the conversation and see where we can possibly find solutions, but also probably have a lot of unanswered questions. So love to get your comments on sort of the background of where we are today.
Yeah. As you are aware on this regard, you know that the recent move by the Georgian ruling party to unleash the violence against its opposition, right? The opposition headquarters, and arrested the Nick Melia, one of the main opposition leader and one of the big opposition parties leader. And the current political flare-up has its roots, and which was paralyzing the country. And what's happened in June 20 of the year of 2019 was that the current Georgian government invited one of the Russian MP to Georgia, and he was the guy who was during the Russia-Georgia war, one of the main part of this, the annexation and occupation, not only the rhetorics, but also he was physically fighting against Georgia into this war. And he was bring into the country. He was invited into the Georgia, and from the chairman of the parliament, he was started to made his statement and so. And the people were so angry that there was a opposition rally outside. And because of this, the crisis, the government arrested, one of the main opposition leader, Nick Melia at that time. And they wanted just there was a trial against him, almost 1 year and a half, and on this regard, it's a background why the opposition leader, the Nick Melia, was involved in this fights,
So this political crisis goes back almost 2 years.
Yes, this crisis goes almost only 2 years, and the Georgian government never finished this, the investigations against him. And it doesn't matter, what was going there, because the real reason why this happens, because of the invitation, or invites to given this Russian member of parliament. And he was addressing, Georgian parliament and the Georgian people, and a lot of people went to the streets, and there was also from the police side, they used the bullets against the young people, and some people lost their eyes, and it was like a very tragic situation in the country almost 2 years ago. But after that, all the time, that the situation was getting the worse and worse. And after that, even it was from the opposition, from the United States and the European Union, there was a March 8 agreement where all parties agreed to to make free the political prisoners at that time, because some other political prisoners also were jailed at that time. And one of them, the owner of one of the main critical TV companies, is still in prison. And before the elections, parliamentary elections, this agreement almost was again broke, And the last elections we had in year 2020 in October, and big number of the violations were registered during these parliamentary elections, which was resulted in further development of the political crisis in Georgia. And the opposition altogether, they refused to go to the parliament, And of course, in a face of the rest of the world, to having one party, like a political system no one wants. And of course, it's going to be effect on the Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration path. But, all our foreign partners, they're suggesting us use the institutions to prove their truth or whatever. But, whenever all institutions are just captured, we're calling it a state capture, what is going right now in Georgia, because all institutions, they work for one single person who runs this country informally. And even if you look to the past, whatever, I don't know, President Shevardnadze or President Saakashvili did in their past, we know whom to blame. In this situation right now we're facing, the guy who runs the country informally, he's not responsible about anything, and this all from prime minister to whatever, the chairman of the parliament or whatever, they're following their the instructions. And the last week resignation of the prime minister of Georgia, it was this a clear proof of this, that what the few last years the non-governmental organization or civil society representatives are describing to our strategic partners in United States and the European Union. But all this situation brought us to this level, Right. And of course, for the Georgia, that we are surrounded with these authoritarian countries.
Right.
And to survive in this global context and this neighborhood as a democratic country, it's not a granted, and it's not only Georgian people's, that we cannot change the situation alone. And the Georgia should not be left alone in this fight, because it's not only the Georgia's fight for the freedom and democracy, but I strongly believe that if you lose the Georgia in this region, in Black Sea region or in South Caucasus, it's gonna be disaster for the defending our future, liberty or democracy or our values in I don't know, in Russia, in Belarus, and everywhere, And I strongly believe that this situation is a litmus test for the Biden administration, because they have to, and we strongly believe that President Biden, that declared that America is back and democracy is back and foreign policy is back. And in these discussions, Georgia should be main, in Georgia, compare with Russia or Belarus, you can change the situation rapidly because we have this only one oligarch, and it's a small country. Right. And to supporting from the West, the democratic forces, it's gonna be making these changes. It's gonna be much easier than that just leaving us there, and it's gonna bring the very drastic consequences in the future to not only for the Georgia, but in the region as well.
For the past almost 2 decades, Georgia has been seen as sort of this bastion of democracy and hope, looking westward, looking towards the EU, looking towards NATO, looking towards the United States for that support, and for a long time it has. How did we get to this point, or how did Georgia get to this point that it may be joining its neighbors as a autocratic nation? So can you address that? Why has Georgia come to this situation? And tell me a little bit about what you think the general feeling of the Georgian people are. Yeah. What are the polls saying these days about support?
You know better than me that how there's autocrats and kleptocrats, they're using this the COVID-19 restrictions to make situation worse, and to implement their the steps towards to this. Right. Yeah, and we think that during the election, almost 2 million people went to vote, and from these 2 million people, more than 1 million people vote for the opposition party together, and which means that the situation is not the people are supporting the democratization, but how we get to this point, it's because of the that no one was punishing for their autocratic or kleptocratic steps the government of Georgia. We understand that from our partners, they don't want it, to the blackmailing the Georgia's reputation outside of the world, and especially when some European Eurosceptics, they're still have some doubts that should they accept Georgia as a part of the European family or NATO or otherwise, We understand that, but during the Trump administration, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, maybe I'm wrong, that unfortunately, US somehow, I don't know how it happened, that they lost their leadership role. They lost their, that they care, that they're solidar to the people who are fighting for freedom and democracy. And it's gonna open the door for the Russians and for the Putin's regime, in my understanding, that they have to act in this country how they want to be represented. And during these past years, whatever the government of Georgia was doing to polarizing the people, to bringing this hate speech and the aggressive manner of the the confrontation and everything, was just in the interest of Putin's regime, not the Georgian interest, unfortunately. And this was that the United States and the European Union past 25 or 30 years, they're investing a lot in Georgia's democratic development, and they have this leverage to ask, that, or make the Georgian government accountable, because I don't know how many millions they were spent from the American taxpayers' money to improve the Georgians, Georgia's court system or judiciary system. And what we have right now, the institutions doesn't work, unfortunately, because it's captured by the one single oligarch. And the only way from this situation, because we are in the the situation now that we can lose everything, whatever we achieved past 25 years. And these achievements are that under really great attack. And we really need, and especially last days or weeks, our international partners and friends are very active on this regard. And we know that, and we saw the many statements from our US partners that if Georgia is not going to be following the democratic development back, then it's going to be, there's some individual sanctions against these oligarchs and the people who are close to him, because we really don't know what is going to be the, how they have to bring them together. The situation is really critical at this moment in the country.
What can we do to support democracy, really support democracy, not just rhetoric, in Georgia?
Yeah, we think that number one, because I don't know, I'm pretty sure, and I know that the last few years the U.S. Department of State and U.S. was trying a lot, to convince them and to bring them to the democratic, the frame, but it doesn't work in my understanding, because he is the guy who runs the country informally. Only the Putin's interest, whatever he is doing to this country, because whatever steps they are doing, it's gets us far from the our integration process to the European Union and NATO. And I strongly believe that nowadays it's a very important a chance for Georgia, because the geopolitical context and the Biden's administrations coming to the power at the United States brings us hope, that the support and also support of Georgia to integrating to this organizations is going to be much higher, and at this situation, all this kind of backsliding from our democracy is part of our national security issues. And the guy should be and must, from the United States side, being to the sanctions. Otherwise, we don't see any other, the ways to overcome this crisis, because it otherwise, that if you are having this conversation or negotiations with some other people, they are not decision makers, and the guy who is involved in this process, he doesn't cares about it, because legally you cannot ask him anything, and why we think that the US administration, and especially the Biden administration right now, they started, for example, to put the Belarusian autocratic, close to the Belarusian autocratic regime people to put under the sanction. Why it's not possible to do the same against the one single oligarch, because
so you're calling for sanctions. Individual sanctions.
Individual sanctions, not the sanctions against the country. Yeah.
How do you get to that point? Do you see the government, the ruling party, coming to the table to solve this crisis? Because, as you said from the beginning, this has been a crisis for almost 2 years. What's the incentive for the government to come to the table?
Otherwise, Georgia is going to lose their, the future to be a part of the European and NATO member, and to be a part of this family, because we will lose our trust. No one wants to see the one-party parliament, and if they're not going to come up with some the consensus, then how they're going to get the opposition there, and how they're going to make the multi-party system then. They're like a one party like we have in North Korea, China, and if Georgia wants to be at the least of this authoritarian countries, then it's always like a whenever it's some like a statements and calling two parties come together and be like it's government responsibility to create the space for consensus and not to using this kind of very aggressive, very the rhetorics which not brings them together, but they're just splitting the society and bringing the the situation much in a worse level.
This issue of Russia manipulating media, manipulating the country, you calling it sort of Georgia a laboratory for its experiments. The United States has been a laboratory. You see this around the world. How can the United States show its support to Georgia? You said in the past that you've seen a leadership vacuum, although Secretary Pompeo was there last year. There have been overtures to Georgia from our government in a bipartisan way, but it seems like we're at a crucial point. And I know you said we could use sanctions and whatnot, but how can the United States and the West, the EU and others, show we mean business when it comes to Russia?
Yeah, I think that I'm pretty sure that they're not getting this diplomatic, the explanation and what is going to and what they have to do, because 2 or 3 days ago there was some webinar where the Chris Socha from the Senate, the head of the administration at the at the committee of the foreign relations at Senate. By the Georgian Dream government, he was called and he was talking about the possible sanctions, individual sanctions against the oligarch, and the from the Georgian Dream government people, they're calling them the agent of the National Movement Party or opposition, and saying that he does not have any information what is going in this country. I mean, either they're not getting or they don't care about anymore this kind of statements that we're deeply concerned, I like this Michael McFaul's tweets. He was telling to the US administration that in a first stage, when you are deeply concerned is a good, but when the counterpart is not getting this message, then you have to act. And in my understanding, to act is individual sanctions to the single oligarch to show that where is United States is supports and stays.
Why do you think John McCain and others, in a bipartisan way, you see this right now, why should we care about what happens in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, not just the state of Georgia?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. And Senator John McCain was best was understanding why Georgia is bigger than Georgia, because we're a very small country, but why it's important to supporting Georgia, because that in the sea of authoritarianism, Georgia always been a beacon of democracy, because the people of this country always fighting for their freedom, independence, and for their democratic values. And always, not only this post-Soviet, but also in a region, the Georgia always was a trendsetter, If Georgia can do, or if Georgia solve the problems of the corruption or other some problems and fight with a very high dignity against the autocrats and the oligarchs, and especially the Putin's regimes, then the people in our neighborhood, like in Ukraine, in Belarus, in Russia, they will follow this example as well. Because I remember once I was reading the former Prime Minister of Russia Federation, the Primakov's, some articles. He was saying that no one in our neighborhood should live better than the Russian lives, Otherwise, it's going to be an example that they have to choose a better life or whatever. And we still think that in this battle for freedom and democracy, if Georgia is going to survive, then Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, and all other countries is going to be surviving this battle for our freedom and democracy. We were fighting for many, many centuries for our freedom. And it's it's not that one day we woke up and we want to be a part of the West. Georgia always being the part of the West with their as a European country, and especially the 100 years of the Russian, and a few days ago, it was 100 years when the Russia occupied this country, never, every single year was in this country for fight our freedom and democracy, and I still believe, and 80% of the population of this country believes that we should fight for our freedom and democracy, but we should not be left alone in this battle. This is a main hope from our side to ask to our friends, Well,
Nino, I think we're going to leave on your words because I think they're very poignant, hopeful words. We won't leave you alone. We will be your partner. You can always count on us and many of us here in the United States. And I think
thank you so much.
And you said it very well, and why Georgia matters not just to the United States, but to the region. What happens in Georgia, is amplified. So we hope for the best for your country. I really thank you for joining us today. I know we'll have a long partnership to come, but I think these types of conversations and just hearing from you and others who are fighting for democracy on the ground are really important. So thank you again for
thank you so much.
Thanks
a lot for your time.